Everyone saw her as just a poor maid, but she knew something about the master of the house that no one else knew. Sandra stood at the tall black gate with her small bag in her hand. The sun was hot on her head. Her dress was simple and neat. She had washed it the night before and pressed it with a hot iron. She fixed the loose button with black thread and tied her hair with a small ribbon. To anyone who looked at her, she was just a young girl searching for work. But inside her chest, her heart was beating fast. She had come here for a reason. She had come with a plan. The guard at the gate took her name and checked a list. He opened the small door and told her to wait in the security room. The room smelled of new paint and tea. A fan turned above her slowly. She sat on a plastic chair and held her bag close. Inside the bag were 2 dresses, a small purse, and her mother's chain. She touched the chain and closed her eyes for a moment. She saw her mother's face. She heard her mother's voice saying that one day the truth would stand up. She took a slow breath and opened her eyes again. A woman in a blue uniform walked in. She had a friendly face and strong arms. She introduced herself as Kemi, the head maid. She asked Sandra a few questions. Can you clean? Can you cook simple meals? Can you follow rules? Can you wake up early? Sandra answered yes. Kemi nodded. She said the family was kind but liked things neat. She said they would test Sandra for 1 week. If she did well, she would stay. They walked into the compound. The house was large and white. The windows were wide and clean. There was a small fountain near the front steps. Water danced and made a soft sound. Flowers grew in neat lines, and the grass was short and bright. It felt like another world. It felt far from the small room Sandra once shared with her mother, where the floor was rough and the roof leaked when it rained. She kept her face calm and her steps steady. Inside the house, everything shone. The tiles were clean. The air smelled like lemon and soap. Kemi showed her the kitchen, the storeroom, the laundry, and the staff quarters at the back. She gave her a simple uniform and a small locker. She explained the daily plan. Wake at 5, sweep the hallway, help in the kitchen, make the beds. Clean the bathrooms, polish the banister, help with the laundry, rest in the afternoon for 1 hour, prepare for dinner. Learn the rules and ask if you do not understand. No shouting, no gossip, no phones during work. Respect the family, respect yourself. After the tour, Kemi took her to meet the people in the house. They were in the living room. The chairs were cream. A rug with simple patterns covered the floor. A tall man stood to greet them. He looked strong and serious. He wore a white shirt and dark trousers. There was a small scar near his chin. He said his name was Mr. Raymond. He spoke in a calm voice. He said he had heard good things about the agency. He asked Sandra to do her best. Beside him sat a woman with kind eyes. She wore a light blue dress and a soft smile. She said her name was Laura. She welcomed Sandra and said the house should feel safe. A small boy leaned against the sofa and grinned. 2 of his front teeth were missing. He said his name was David and he asked if Sandra could draw. She smiled and said she could try. Sandra kept her eyes on their faces and her mind on her plan. She was here to work. She was here to watch. She was here to find a way to the truth. She would not rush. She would not shout. She would not let anger drag her by the neck. She would hold it in her hand like a hot coal and keep her fingers safe. That was what her mother taught her before the sickness took her away. Do not let bitterness swallow you. Hold your head up. Tell the truth when the time is right. The first days were long. She woke before dawn and swept the stairs while the house was still quiet. The morning smelled like dew and polish. She wiped tables until her cloth came away clean. She learned where every plate and cup belonged. She learned the sound of the cook's spoon tapping the pot. She learned the way Laura liked the pillows arranged. She learned that David did not like onions in his eggs. She learned that Mr. Raymond left the house early and returned late. When he passed the staff, He said thank you in a voice that sounded real. At night she lay on her small bed in the staff quarters and stared at the ceiling. Sometimes the fan hummed. Sometimes the night insects sang. She thought about her mother. She thought about the story of a young love that had turned into fear. She thought about the day her mother, Grace Okoro, said a name. It was the day her fever had been heavy. She held Sandra's hand and said the name with pain. Raymond. She said he had told her to get rid of the child. She said she refused, and he ran. She said life had been hard, but love had kept them. She said she forgave him with her mouth, but her heart was still sore. She said if the truth ever came, Sandra must carry it with a calm hand. On the fourth day, Sandra was sent to dust the framed pictures in the hallway. She moved slowly and looked at the faces. She saw Mr. Raymond in a suit. She saw Laura in a red dress. She saw David in a school uniform. She saw pictures of them at a beach, at a charity event, at a school show. She paused at one picture of Mr. Raymond when he was younger. His smile was wide. His shirt had dirt on it. He stood in front of an old store with a friend. It was the face of a boy trying to climb out of a small life. She felt something strange. It was not softness. It was not anger. It was a question. Had he changed? Had he learned? Did the boy who ran become a man who stayed? She shook the thought away and kept working. She reminded herself why she was here. She was here to make him face the truth. She was here to carry her mother's name into this bright house and lay it on the table. She repeated those words to herself as if they were steps on a road. On the sixth day, Laura found Sandra in the storeroom counting plates. Laura asked about her family. The question was light, but it rested on a heavy place. Sandra took a breath. She did not want to lie. She also did not want to pour out everything at once. She said she lived with her mother. She said her mother had passed after a long sickness. She said she did not know her father. Laura's eyes softened. She said she was sorry. She said the house should feel safe. She told Sandra that if she needed anything, she should speak. She told her she believed in education for girls and asked if Sandra had finished school. Sandra said no. She said she wanted to. Laura nodded and said they would talk later. She squeezed Sandra's hand and left. The touch was warm. It left a mark in Sandra's mind. The days turned into 2 weeks. The house felt less like a picture and more like a place with real breath. Sandra saw small things. She saw Laura leave notes for the staff that said thank you. She saw Mr. Raymond fix a broken handle in the staff bathroom himself when the repairman came late. She saw David share his biscuits with the driver during a long wait. She saw an argument in the kitchen between 2 staff and saw Kimmy settle it with firm words and a gentle voice. She saw a delivery man try to cheat on a receipt and saw Laura catch it with a calm face and clear eyes. She saw a call come in with bad news about a project and saw Mr. Raymond sit alone in the garden for 5 minutes before coming back inside with his shoulders straight. Each thing she saw pressed against the hot coal in her palm. The coal stayed hot. It did not burn out, but it did not burn her the same way. She began to notice something else as well. When David told a joke, she laughed. When the cook made puff-puff for the staff, she smiled. When the gardener grew a new rose, she bent to smell it. There was still pain in her chest, but there was also air. There was still a plan in her mind, but there was also patience. One evening after dinner, Sandra was asked to dust the library. The room was quiet and smelled like old wood. Books lined the walls. A small clock ticked. On the desk, she found a photo frame turned down. She lifted it and saw a picture of Mr. Raymond as a very young man standing beside a small kiosk. The date was written at the back in a neat hand. Beside the date were 3 words. "Keep moving, Ray." She wondered who wrote the words. She turned the frame back and cleaned the desk. As she worked, David came in holding a sketchbook. He asked if he could draw while she cleaned. She said yes. He sat on the carpet and drew a house with a gate and a fountain. He drew 3 stick people, a tall one, a medium one, a small one. He added a 4th and looked at Sandra with a grin. He said the 4th one was her. He said she lived with them now and helped him with his homework. He said she listened to his stories about class and ants and stars. He asked if ants sleep. She said she did not know, but she thought they rested. He nodded as if that made sense and drew a small ant bed near the fountain. He said the ant bed was their own small city. Sandra's throat felt tight for a second. It was a simple drawing. It was a simple boy. But it pressed something soft in her. She finished the dusting and thanked David for keeping her company. He showed her the drawing with pride. She told him he was very good and that he should keep drawing. He smiled wide and ran out to show his mother. That night Sandra lay awake. The truth was still waiting at the door of her mouth. She had not yet knocked. She had not yet said the name. She was waiting for the right time, but she knew she could not wait forever. Waiting too long can turn truth into a song. She whispered her mother's name and asked for guidance. She sat up and took out the folded paper from her bag. It had a clinic name and a number. It was the clinic her mother had written down years ago on the back of a leaflet. She did not know if it would help. She only knew that when the time came, she would need a place that would not play games. The time came faster than she thought. 2 days later, late in the evening, she asked Kemi if she could speak to Mr. Raymond in private about something important. Kemi looked surprised. She asked if everything was fine. Sandra said yes, but she needed to speak to him. Kemi went to the living room and returned with a small nod. He would meet her in the small sitting room near the library. Sandra washed her hands and wiped them dry. She stood in the room and waited. The clock ticked. The air felt heavy. Mr. Raymond entered and closed the door behind him. He looked calm but alert. He asked if she was all right. She said she was. She said she had a question. He said she could ask. Her mouth was dry. She swallowed. She lifted her head and looked straight at him. She asked if he knew someone named Grace Okoro. His eyes changed at once. The name hit him like a door that opened by itself. He did not hide it. He did not know how. He stared at her and asked why she was asking. He asked who that person was to her. She asked him again if he knew the name. He said yes. He said many years ago he knew a girl with that name. The room felt smaller. The clock ticked louder. Sandra took a slow breath. She told him that Grace was her mother. She told him that her mother had died after a long sickness. She told him that her mother had spoken his name. She told him that she, Sandra, had come to this house with a plan to make him face the truth. Then she said the words that had waited in her mouth for years. She told him that he was her father. The man in front of her did not speak for a long moment. His hand went to the small scar near his chin. He looked at her face as if he was seeing it for the first time. He looked at her jaw. He looked at her eyes. He looked at the way she held her shoulders. He looked afraid and sorry and shocked at the same time. He said he needed to be sure. He asked for a DNA test. His voice was quiet and careful. It was not rude. It was not soft. It was the voice of a man standing near a cliff and feeling the wind. Sandra had expected this. She nodded. She said it was fine. She took the folded paper from her bag and placed it on the table. It had a clinic name. He picked it up and looked at it. He said he knew the clinic. He said they would go. He asked her not to tell anyone until the result came back. His eyes were wide and tired. She said she would wait. He thanked her in a voice that sounded like it was breaking at the edges. He did not sleep that night. He lay on the bed next to Laura and watched the dark. He thought of a young boy in a dirty shirt. He thought of a small house with a squeaky fan. He thought of a girl with bright eyes who had trusted him. He thought of the day he ran and the lies he told himself. He thought of the long years he spent building a life that looked clean on the outside, while a question waited in the shadows. He sat up and walked to the window. He looked at the garden and put his hand to his face. He knew that in the morning he would have to keep moving like the old photos said. But first, he would have to stop running. Sandra also did not sleep well. She lay on her bed and tried to calm her heart. She was not sure if she felt relief or fear. She remembered the way he looked at her when she said her mother's name. She remembered the way his hand touched his scar. She remembered that his voice did not fight her. She whispered to herself that the truth would stand. She held her mother's chain and closed her eyes. They went to the clinic 2 days later. The waiting room was cool and quiet. A nurse took their names. Another nurse took samples. A doctor explained the process. The test would take a short time. They would receive a call. They left the clinic and stood outside for a moment. Cars passed. A hawker pushed a wheelbarrow with oranges. A woman held a child on her hip and crossed the road. Life did not stop for their fear. It moved on, like a river. The days that followed were heavy. Sandra went to work and kept her face calm. She washed plates and folded sheets. She helped David with homework. She listened to Laura talking about a charity project. She smiled when the cook told a joke about Pepper that ran away from the pot. She did her job, but her chest felt tight. Her ears were waiting for a phone call that could change everything. For Mr. Raymond, work felt like a fog. He sat in meetings and heard words, but the words felt far. He signed papers and checked numbers, but the numbers swam. He made a mistake in a message and had to correct it. He almost drove through a red light and stopped in time. He put his head on his desk for a moment and told himself to breathe. In the staff quarters, Sandra kept to herself. She did not tell the other maids anything. She did not want to stir the house before the truth came. Still, people sense change, even when no one tells them. Kemi watched Sandra with quiet eyes and told the others to mind their work. She told them that the house needed peace. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Sandra was in the laundry room folding towels. Mr. Raymond was in his office downtown. The doctor spoke to him first and said the test was clear. He thanked the doctor and ended the call. He sat very still. He felt a wave pass through him. It felt like fear. It felt like relief. It felt like a door opening and closing at the same time. He called the house and asked that Sandra be told to come to the study when he returned. He drove home slowly. When he reached the house, he did not go to the living room. He walked straight to the study. He closed the door and stood by the window. He watched a small bird land on the fence and fly away. He told himself to speak like a man and not like a boy. He told himself to stand in the truth, even if it shook his knees. Sandra entered the study. Her face was calm, but her hands were tight by her sides. He turned from the window and faced her. He said the result had arrived. He said the test showed that he was her father. He said it in a voice that was low but clear. He did not say sorry first. He said the truth first. Then he said he was sorry. He said it once. Then he said it again. The words sounded too small for what had happened, but it was a start. His eyes were wet. He did not try to hide it. Sandra listened. She had imagined this moment many times. In some dreams she screamed. In some dreams she threw things. In some dreams she ran. But now that it was here, she did none of those things. Her mother's last warning sat in her chest like a gentle hand. Do not let bitterness swallow you. She stood straight. She said she had come for truth. She said she had also come with anger. She said the house had surprised her. She said Laura had been kind. She said David's laugh had made her feel light. She said she could not break people who did not hurt her. She said she did not want to destroy a home to punish the man who hurt her mother long ago. She said she wanted her mother's name to be spoken with respect. She said she wanted a clean path. She said the truth was enough. He nodded. He looked like a man who had been running for a long time and had finally stopped. He said he would tell his wife. He said he would tell his son. He said he would not hide. He said he would accept whatever came. He said he would try to make things right. Sandra said she would not fight him in the open. She said she would not let anyone use her story to pour shame on his wife. She said she would not allow gossip to make her mother's name dirty. He thanked her. He said he did not deserve her calm, but he was grateful for it. He told Laura that night. He asked her to sit with him in the living room. He spoke slowly. He told her about the boy he had been. He told her about the fear he felt. He told her about grace. He told her about the test. He told her about Sandra's courage. He did not twist the story. He did not hide behind sweet words. He said what happened and then kept quiet. Laura listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked away for a while. Her eyes were full. She set her glass on the table with a soft sound. She stood and walked to the window. She breathed in. She breathed out. She put her hand on her chest. She did not shout. She did not break anything. She asked to be alone. She went to the garden and sat on a small bench near the flowers. Sandra did not know that the talk was happening. She was in her room folding her uniform. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating. She felt the house holding its breath. When Laura came back inside, she called her husband by his name. She told him she was hurt. She told him she needed time. She told him she knew this was before their marriage. But pain does not check dates. It just arrives. She told him she had promised herself to build a home where people are seen and loved. She told him she would try to keep that promise. She told him they would face the truth together. She told him there would be rules. There would be boundaries. There would be steps. But there would also be a door open to kindness. He nodded and covered his face with his hands. He said thank you many times. Laura did not sleep much that night. She woke before dawn and sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. The house was quiet. She thought of the girl in the staff quarters. She thought of the picture of a young man in front of a kiosk. She thought of the small boy who drew stick people and added a fourth person to the family without fear. She stood up and went to the door of the staff quarters. She knocked. Sandra opened the door with cautious eyes. Laura asked if they could talk. They sat in the small sitting area. Laura spoke gently. She said she knew the truth now. She said she was hurt, but she did not hate Sandra. She said Sandra was young and had lost her mother. She said no one chooses where they are born. She said she wanted to learn how to be kind in a hard moment. She said she wanted to protect her son and her home. She said she wanted to protect Sandra too. She asked if Sandra wanted to finish school. She offered to help. She said there would be no rush to move or change roles if Sandra was not ready. She said what she cared about most was a clean heart and a safe home. Sandra listened and tears filled her eyes. She said she was not here to steal a place. She said she did not want to take what was not hers. She said she only wanted her mother's name to be respected and her own heart to rest. Laura nodded. She said that sounded right to her. She said they would move slowly. She said they would speak to David at the right time, in simple words. She said they would hold the truth like a bowl. They would not drop it. They would not throw it. They would place it on the table and sit with it. From that day, the house changed in a quiet way. The walls stayed white. The floors stayed clean. But the air carried a new weight and a new light. Some moments felt heavy. Some moments felt bright. David did not know at first. He ran and laughed and drew ants. He asked if Sandra would help him with his spelling test. She said yes. She made him a song to remember hard words. He sang the song and clapped his hands. News does not move only through phones and papers. It moves through eyes and whispers. Some staff guessed that something was happening. They saw the way Laura looked at Sandra with careful kindness. They saw the way Mr. Raymond walked with a thoughtful face. They saw the way Kemi cut short any gossip in the kitchen. She told them to wash their hands and keep their mouths clean as well. She said the house paid them to work, not to spread stories. A week later, Raymond and Laura told David. They sat at the dining table with him in the evening after homework. Laura spoke first. She told him they had learned something important. She told him that a young woman in their house had a very special link to their family. She told him that the young woman was Sandra. She told him that Sandra was his sister. She told him that this news came from long before he was born. She told him that the house would make space for love and respect. She told him that feelings could be big and they would talk about them. David did not speak for a moment. He looked at their faces. He asked if that meant Sandra would still help him with his drawings. They smiled and said yes. He asked if they would have more ice cream now that they were 4. They laughed and said they would see. He slid off his chair and went to find Sandra. He told her the news with the clean mouth of a child. He said he was happy because it meant he had someone new to tease and to protect. He said he would teach her his football trick. She hugged him and told him thank you. That night Sandra sat in the garden alone. The sky was dark and the stars were bright. She spoke to her mother in her heart. She said the truce was now standing. She said the house had not broken. She said she would try her best to walk with peace. She said she would keep Grace Okoro's name bright. She said she would not let bitterness swallow her. A light breeze moved the leaves. She felt calm for the first time in a long time. But the world outside the gate did not sleep. People love a story with spice. A cousin called and asked questions that did not help. A man at the company made a poor joke. A neighbor pressed Laura with a smile that hid sharp teeth. Raymond and Laura spoke at night and agreed on 3 things. They would not explain their private matters to the street. They would speak clearly to family. They would protect the children and the staff. They would guard their home like a precious bowl. They also had to decide what to do about Sandra's place. Would she stay in the staff quarters? Would she move to a guest room? Would she stop working and go back to school? It was not a small matter. It was not a matter for one day. They chose a path of small steps. For now, she would finish the week in her current role and then move to a guest room if she wanted. She would start her return to school. Laura would help with the process. Raymond would handle the fees and keep records clean and clear. They would put money matters in writing to remove confusion. They would speak to the staff with care and set a new tone. Sandra liked the plan. She did not want to jump. She wanted to walk. She said she would like to move to a guest room after the week. She said she would like to go back to school. She said she would also like to keep helping in small ways around the house when she could. She said work kept her hands busy and her mind calm. A few days later, Raymond drove Sandra to the small room where she and her mother had lived. The landlord had allowed them a short visit before the next tenant moved in. The room was empty now. The floor was rough. The window let in a slice of light. Sandra walked to the corner where their mat used to be. She touched the wall. She pointed to a spot and said that was where her mother kept her pot and spoon. She pointed to another and said that was where she slept as a child. Raymond stood near the door. He did not speak for a while. His eyes were red. He whispered sorry to the air. He whispered sorry to the space where a woman had once stood. They went to the small church her mother liked. It was quiet. A woman was sweeping near the front. Sandra sat on a back bench and closed her eyes. She thanked her mother for raising her. She thanked her for the lessons. She promised again to choose peace. Raymond sat beside her with his hands on his knees and his head bent. He did not ask for easy things. He asked for strength. He asked for courage to face eyes and words. He asked for wisdom to lead his house with honesty. He asked for a clean heart. Back at the house, Laura was in the kitchen tasting stew. She asked Sandra if she wanted to learn the recipe. Sandra smiled and said yes. They cooked together. They talked about little things, the right amount of pepper, the trick for washing rice, how to keep tomatoes from spoiling. Big love often grows inside small talks. It does not always shout. It does not always show. It just stays, like a warm light in a window. That night, Sandra moved a small bag to a guest room. The room was simple and bright. There was a bed with clean sheets, a small desk, and a window that looked out to the garden. She placed her mother's chain on the table. She placed her notebook beside it. She wrote 3 lines before sleep. Tell the truth. Honor my mother. Choose peace. In the morning, the house woke to a new rhythm. David ran down the stairs and shouted that his sister must not be late for breakfast. The cook laughed. Kemi smiled in the hallway and told the staff to greet Sandra with respect. Mr. Raymond wore a calm face. Laura poured tea and spoke to the driver about the day's plan. Not every step was smooth. A relation dropped by one afternoon and made a rude comment about shame. Laura told him to leave if he could not be kind. He looked shocked and left. Later, he sent a message to Raymond that was sharp and unfair. Raymond did not argue by phone. He told him they could meet if he wanted to talk like family. The man did not reply. Boundaries stood like clean fences around their peace. At work, someone tried to bring the story into the break room. Raymond called a short meeting and set a clear rule. No jokes about people's lives. No talk that hurts. They were there to build, not to break. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply spoke like a man who knew the weight of words. The room fell quiet. The rule held. A week later, Laura and Sandra went to the market to buy school supplies. They haggled and laughed when a seller tried to double the price of a simple notebook. Sandra picked a bag that was strong and plain. She chose pens and a small calculator. She bought sticky notes and a ruler. Laura added a small pouch with a smile and said it was a gift. On the way home, they shared roasted corn and talked about subjects. Sandra said she liked business studies. Laura said that made sense because Sandra had a clear mind. When school started, Sandra woke early and dressed in a neat uniform. She tied her shoes. She stood before the mirror and saw a girl who had walked through fire and did not smell of smoke. She picked up her bag and went downstairs. David cheered and told her not to forget to bring him a story from her day. She promised she would. That afternoon she came home and sat with him at the table. She showed him a timetable. He showed her a drawing of a dog that looked like a cow. They laughed. Laura watched them with a soft face. She felt pain in her chest still. Pain does not disappear like mist, but it did not rule her. It sat in a chair on the porch while love and work moved inside the house. One evening, Sandra walked to the garden and stood near the flowers. The sky was purple. Birds were calling each other to their nests. She thought of the first day she stood at the gate. She thought of the hot sun on her head and the heavy plan in her chest. She thought of the small fan in the security room. She thought of the fountain that made music and the walls that shone. She thought of how she felt like a stranger and a fire. Now she felt like a person in a story that had turned a corner. Mr. Raymond joined her. He stood a few steps away. He said he had spoken to a lawyer to set up something for her education and future. He said it would be clear on paper. He said it would not take from Laura or David. He said he wanted no fights later. He said he had learned that clear writing is a friend to peace. She thanked him. She said she had nothing to give him but her effort. She said she would study hard. She said she would try to be someone her mother would smile at. He nodded. He said he did not expect thanks. He said he was doing what he should have done long ago. He said he could not rebuild the past. He said he could build the next days with clean hands. He said he would try. As the days moved, Sandra began to breathe in a new way. She did not forget the old days. She did not forget the bread with nothing inside and the coughing nights. She did not forget the name she carried to the gate. She did not forget the young man who ran. She also did not forget the man who turned and stood. Both truths lived in the same house. She learned to hold them without letting them fight in her hands. At night, when the house grew quiet, she took her mother's chain and held it for a moment. She thanked God for strength. She thanked her mother for wisdom. She promised to keep walking. And so the first part of this story ends with a house that did not break, a truth that did not hide, and a girl who came for revenge but chose a wiser road. The test had spoken. The father had faced the mirror. The wife had chosen courage. The little boy had opened his arms. The girl had stepped from anger into purpose, but there were still eyes outside the gate. There were still relatives with sharp tongues. There were still choices about money and family and future. There was a meeting to call where the truth would be told to both families at once. There was a letter coming from someone who wanted to use the story for trouble. There were doors ahead, some easy and some hard. There was also a bright path for a girl named Sandra, who had learned to hold fire without burning her fingers.